All right, guys, how are you doing? It is me, Jerome Parker, and today we are getting into databases, which this today will be our last introductory PHP stream. But before we get started, let me do my regular promotions. If you guys haven't checked out my website, JyroneParker.com, there should be a link in the description. Check that out. All my blogs go to my website, and all these videos can be seen there. That is JyroneParker.com. Also, check out my latest app, Treat Me at Home. That is treatmeathome.online. That is a web app that connects service providers with people who want those services done at home. So whether you want your haircut, you want a private tutor, or anything in between, go to treatmeathome.online or book yourself a service provider, schedule time, and have them come to your house and do that service. That's treatmeathome.online. And last and not least, if you are an Android user, download my latest Android app, Socket Droid. Control and monitor any device in real time. Socket Droid allows you to, using a web interface, see and monitor any device that you've installed Socket Droid on in real time. So, example, let's say you have a child and you give them a phone. You need to know where they're at because they're supposed to be home at 3 o'clock and it's 5. You can go on Socket Droid, click the GPS, and in real time see them on a Google map. You can also do things such as open up the camera, open up the microphone, and get text messages. That is socketdroid.com, and with the link to download in the Google Play Store. And finally, K boxes, our Cody boxes, officially go on sale Monday, April 3rd. If you do not know what Cody is, it is an open source media center that allows you to watch virtually anything, listen to anything, live TV streams. You can get out of the airwave channels. I could go on forever. That is on my website, JyroneParker.com, to look at in detail. Is that everything? I think that's everything. All right. So databases. What are databases? Most web applications and mobile applications that use a web service utilize databases to deliver dynamic content. Without a database, if you went to facebook.com, everything will look the same every single time. It would be what's called a static web page. But by having a database that stores things such as your username, your password, your likes, your post, metadata about your uploads, etc., it gives you a dynamic experience. So, for example, when you log in, you put in your email and your password. The application probably looks in the a users table in the database and make sure everything matches up. If it does, give you access. Once you hit your timeline, it goes to the database, find all of the posts of my friends who are correspond to my account ID in the database. And I'll get more into what all that means, but basically understand that databases allow for dynamic content. So there are multiple database systems. The ones that we're going to focus on is MySQL. It is an open source database and the most widely used one. It's free to use and it comes already inside the Laravel Homestead virtual machine that we should have downloaded. And guys, feel free to ask any questions during the time. Feel free to let me know who's in the chat room. I love getting shout outs. So, databases are a very complicated subject, and I'm going to be doing multiple videos throughout my tenure here on YouTube about databases and best practices on how to do certain stuff. So today we're going to focus on how to connect to a database, once you connect to a database, in this case a MySQL database, how you're going to create a new database in the database system. We're going to look how to insert data into a database. We're going to look how to select data from a database. We're going to look how to update data in a database, and we're going to look how to delete data in a database. So, PHP, and how does it connect to a MySQL database? PHP standard library has a MySQL I, when I stands for improved because it's a improved version of the old MySQL connector. But PHP has a MySQL I class used to connect to MySQL databases. And in this tutorial, that is what we're going to use. So basically, to connect to a database, you just instantiate a new instance of the MySQL I class. And all of those parameters, it takes in the server name, which in this case, since we're using the virtual machine and it's local to the virtual machine, you're going to use the term localhost. And localhost is a keyword saying reference this computer. Otherwise, you could give the IP address or the domain name if the database is stored on a remote server. But usually, it's going to be localhost. We're using Laravel Forge, so the default Laravel Forge username, or not Forge, Laravel Homestead. So the default Laravel Homestead username is Homestead, and the password is secret. So when you create a new MySQL I instance, you will pass in the server name, the username, and the password in the constructor. And let me go ahead and spin this up for you. Intro to PHP, new file, MySQL.php. Yeah, MySQL.php. Localhost. Just getting this ready for you guys. Homestead. Jyrone. All right. Let me turn this around for you guys. So, in my intro to PHP folder, I created a new file called MySQL.php. And inside of this file, we see here I have my server name set to localhost, I have my username set to homestead, and I have my password set to secret. We're going to create a connection, and we instantiate a new instance of the MySQL I class, passing in server name, passing in username, passing in password. It checks to see if there's a connection error. If there's a connection error, that means that we had some sort of error connecting to the database, and we want to exit out. That's what this die function does. It's a built-in PHP function. Basically, it's the same thing as exit. So it dies. So it exits and echoes, basically. If that passes, we're going to create a new database. And I'm going to explain the syntax in a second, but just know we're going to creates a new database called Jyrone Parker Live. If there is no issue with the query, and this is the query, so you pass it a query. If it equals true, then you know that the database was created successfully. Else, there's an error, and we'll pass out the error, and then we close the connection. So MySQL uses a programming language called SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. So SQL uses keywords such as create, select, delete, database, table. I'll go through the list as it comes up in examples. But you create these queries using these keywords. So if you want to create a new database, so you put the action. So we're going to do a create action. What are we creating? We're creating a database, and then you pass it the name. So anytime you need to create a new database, this is how we're going to do it. So let's run this. Oopsie. Let's run this real quick. Right here. Log into the Homestead machine. Let's see. Okay. CD programs. Need to get a new keyboard. Intro to PHP. All right. PHP MySQL.php. So I'm expecting this to say everything is good. All right, database created successfully. So I'm going to use the MySQL command and connect to the database from the command line and look and see for myself if that database is created. So MySQL-U stands for username. The username is Homestead-P. Enter password. We're going to put in the password. All right, so we're going to do show databases. And we can see here, Jyrone Parker live. So that's how you connect to a database, and that is how you create a new database. So in the beginning of your application, you're probably going to have to create a new database. Well, what you're going to want to do is check to see if a database already exists, and if it doesn't exist, then you want to create one. But we'll get more into those best practices as they come up in example. So now you've created the database. You have to tell MySQL what is the structure of that database, or what is the schema of that database. So what is it? So like I said, the schema is basically the structure of a database. So if you have your database might have a users table. It might have sorry about that. It might have a post table. It can have whatever your business logic calls for. That's what you're going to want to put in your schema. So a schema is basically a list of tables, and each table has its own schema as well. So, for example, let's say we're making a table for guests. We're making a guest book application. You would want to create. A table with. You will want to create a table called My Guest. First thing we want to do is we want to add an auto incrementing ID integer. And what does auto incrementing mean? It means every time a new entry is added to that database, it automatically adds +1 to an ID. So the first one will be ID 1, the second one will be ID 2, etc., etc. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask. There we go. PHP. I'm trying to get this right for you guys. Sorry. What else is going to be on this table? So the first name, the last name, the email, and the registration date. So let me get this. Gotta switch this back over so you can see what I'm doing. Guess successfully /n save and display. All right. So here we have this. I made a new file called newtable.php. We're doing the same thing here. We're connecting to the SQL server, MySQL server, but instead of creating a database, we're creating a new table called myGuest. We have an ID. It's an integer. It can get up to 6 digits long. It's unsigned. It auto increments and it's the primary key. So I already explained what auto increment is. Now, what's primary key? That means it's the primary way that the database is going to search on and sort on ID, and it's the key. So if you have any foreign relations that rely on the ID of the guest table in another table, so it might have like guest underscore ID is one of the tables, and that corresponds to the ID on my guest. That's a key. We're gonna have the first name and the last name. They cannot be null. That's what not null means. And they're gonna be var chars, means it can just be any random string of characters, no more than 30 characters. Email, same thing, var char, but 50. This one can be null. And then the registration date is a timestamp that can also be null. So if we run this, it should say my guest created successfully, and we should be good. Error creating database, no database selected. What did I do wrong? Unselected database name. You gotta select the database name. Equals Jyrone Parker Live. After you create your database, you want to select the database name that you want to put your tables on. Let's try that again. Unexpected con. Oh. Semicolons. All right. My guest created successfully. All right. So just again, because I'm paranoid, I'm going to go back into MySQL. And this time I'm going to do show or use Jyrone Park Live. All right, show tables. All right, my guess. If you want to see what the schema of that table is, you can use describe my guess. And here we see primary key cannot be null, auto increment. The default is the current timestamp for the registration date, email, last name, first name. All right, cool, it's there. All right, let's switch back. All right, so that is how you create a table. And there are various attributes and different types of data types that you can give a table column. I don't have time to go through all of them, so I'm just going to tell you guys, Stack Overflow, Quora, Google, you can find all of the different types, but I mean, usually you're going to use the same basic ones. And when we get to Laravel, you'll come to see that all this is going to be obsolete anyway, because we're going to be using the framework to handle a lot of this stuff with programmatic ease. All right, so we've learned how to connect to a database. We've learned how to create a new database, and we've learned how to create new tables. So what's next? Well, it would be nice to insert some data into the database. So why don't we do that? All right. So in order to insert data into a MySQL database, you have to use the insert SQL function. So basically, let me make a new file real quick. We're gonna call this one insert. Duplicate. We're gonna call this one insert.php. Oh, that should help if you see, huh? All right. So everything else is the same. The only thing that's different is the SQL. So here we're saying insert into my guest. We want to insert in the first name row. We want to insert in the last name row. We want to insert in the email row because remember, we don't need to do ID. It's auto increment. And we don't need to do reg date because it automatically gets the current timestamp. So, screw John Doe. Jyrone, Parker, and Jyrone.parker@gmail.com. All right. I'm gonna say guest inserted successfully. All right. So let's run that. Oh no. All right. Let's go in here. Use John Parker. Select. Actually, yeah. So that's in there. I'm actually gonna just show you select all from my guess. We're gonna do this programmatically, but I just want to show that it's in there. See, Jyrone Parker, Jyrone.parker@gmail.com. We have the date. We have the ID. So I just did a select statement. So I'm gonna actually show you guys how to do that programmatically. But let's recap. So we just did the insert data function. So typically what you will have is you'll have a website, you'll have a form that people fill out the form, and then it's going to insert into the database. We got it? Got it? Capiche? It's pretty simple. Don't overthink it. It's really simple. Insert. It's called CRUD operations. Create, retrieve, update, delete. Create, select, update, or insert, select, update, delete. You can look at it either way. All right, so let's. All right, cool. Select. So let me copy. This. And so we're gonna. So sometimes you might only need to select a certain number of rows. You might not need to select all the email rows from the guest database. So how do you only select the rows that you need? Well, that's where the good old handy select comes in. So we're gonna duplicate this. We're gonna call this select. We're going to do this right here. And let me turn this back around for you. All right, so PHP select. So before I run that, what are we doing here? Select ID, first name, last name from guest. Before I did select star, the star is a wild card, which means select everything. But you can either put comma separated what columns you want, or you can select everything, and then you put what table. So that you get a result set from that. You're gonna get a number of rows, and then you're gonna iterate over the rows and echo out the rows in array format. So ID 1, Jyrone Parker. Made pretty much sense. So I only had one thing in the database, as you can see here. If I had 20 things in the database, I'd have 20 rows. Pretty simple. So we've done create, we've done insert, we've done select. So there's only two more. We have update and delete. So before I get into that, when we use a select, it should be pretty obvious. Let's go back to Facebook. On your timeline, you want to select post where account ID equals your user ID and your friend's ID, and et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty complicated with Facebook. But long story short, there's a select going on in there somewhere. So update, when we use update, pretty obvious. Profile settings, editing a blog post, editing a Facebook post. Anytime you need to go back and edit, you would use update. So let me go ahead and get that prepared for you. Duplicate. I'm gonna call that update PHP and all right. All right, so the SQL for update goes as follows: update, table name, set, column name equals column value, and then you put a where clause to figure out where to differentiate what row to fix. So we're gonna update last name to Doe where ID equals 1 because we only have one ID in the database. And then afterwards, we're going to run the select one again and see how that changed. Cool? PHP update. All right, a record select, and now my name is Jyrone Doe. See how that works? So, databases are pretty easy. We got one more to do, delete, which is arguably the easiest of them all. But yeah, so that's how you do an update. Just the keyword, the update keyword, the name of the table. You use the set keyword and you set the column name equal to the column value, where truth constraint equals truth constraint. The last thing we need to do is delete. Obvious use case for deleting. You need to delete some shit. So let's do a duplicate, delete, and make sure ain't nobody on the chat room. All right, cool. Delete. So with the delete keyword, the delete SQL rather, You use the delete keyword and use the where keyword. So basically, just have a truth test and you delete wherever that truth test is true. All right, so let me switch this around. So here we have delete from my guess where ID equals 1. So I'll give you 3 guesses on what that's going to do. It's going to delete my account or account equals 1, which will leave us with nothing in the database. So let's run this. All right, it's deleted. Select. We have 0 results. Now, if we do insert again, and then we do select, notice how the ID didn't go back to 1. It went to 2. It always goes up. So just remember that if you're doing your testing and stuff. But that's the basics. That's the basics. Databases are a really complicated subject, and I'm not going to get into some of the more advanced topics right now. What I would like you guys to do is write a PHP program that, I don't know. Let's say write a program that takes a loop, generates a random number, and then inserts that number into a database that you created. And create a database called random numbers. Create random numbers app. Create a table called random numbers, and have an ID, and have an integer column for entries, and then write a script that creates a random integer and then inserts it into the entries column of that database that you just created. And that will give some good practice. Maybe you might want to make a custom error exception handler if something goes wrong. Flex your muscles. Be creative with it. But next live stream, we will do a background PHP app utilizing everything we've learned thus far. And then following that, we're going to go on to HTML and JavaScript. So we'll do the front end portions. After we do those tutorials, we will dive into the full-fledged level framework. I'm really appreciative of you guys who have been following me thus far. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to my blog, JyroneParker.com. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be doing a 24-hour live stream. I'm going to the Data for Democracy Global Hackathon. It's the first ever global hackathon, and one of the 7 city locations will be my hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. 502 come up. So I will be participating, and hopefully I will be allowed to live stream the event. And if I am, best believe that is going to be a live stream. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. This is Master Shake hollering out, Jyrone Parker Live. And you guys have a good day.